Hi, and I'm now joined by Amanda Jennings with her exciting debut novel, Sworn Secret. Hello, Amanda.
Hi, Simone.
I have to tell you, I'm seriously excited to meet you because, you know when you just read an amazing book and you're like, I need to meet the author?
Oh, brilliant.
So I
Thank
started
you.
reading this at 7 o'clock at night and I was up till like 3 in the morning.
Oh, no,
just like...
exhausted.
Yeah, I was like, I can't go to sleep without finding out what happens in this.
That's
It was
brilliant.
that good.
That's really...
So this is basically a kind of thriller, but
Yeah.
without obviously, it's not crime scene investigation exactly, but it is a thriller.
There's an element of suspense, an element of wanting to find out what happens.
So could you explain more about it?
Of course, yeah. About a year before the book opens, the family involved lose their teenage daughter, their eldest daughter, in a tragic accident. And then as the book opens, it transpires that they find out things about her that they didn't realise. Their angelic child wasn't possibly quite so angelic, and it starts to tamper with their recovery process, but also starts to raise questions about how she died and whether there was sort of malpractice involved.
And it's very emotional actually, because it obviously you have the opening bit where the daughter who dies is alive, and there's a really mysterious scene at the beginning which sets it up, but you don't know who she's interacting with.
No.
And you don't know exactly how she dies, but there's a hint that it's not quite right.
A hint.
And you're like, what happened? And then it goes obviously a year forward, and you're dealing with this family more in the mourning process. The interesting thing about parents is they can always look at their child as they're like 5 years old or something. They're innocent and angelic. And what you realise in the book is the character that dies wasn't at all an angel. And that's a really interesting thing, because a lot of parents don't ever want to find out that other side of them. And unfortunately, in this story, they find out the opposite, don't they?
And I wanted to play with that a little bit as well. That was quite key, actually, this idea that when someone dies, you aggrandise, or you put them on a pedestal a little bit.
Yeah.
And
that's really interesting,
you
actually.
sort of pick and choose your memories. You know, even I haven't lost anyone from my immediate family, but certainly friends. You never remember the times where they annoyed you or they upset you. Just remember how fun they were at a party, or what great company they were. And I think I like that idea of this. These sisters, one of them being taken out of the situation, and the whole family remembering her strength of character and her sort of laugh and her humour, and forgetting that she was a stroppy little madam sometimes, and walking around and has these horrible secrets that...
Could I hold you for one
Yes, of
moment? We
course.
have to go to a break. I will be back after the break with more Loaded Chicklet. Welcome back, and I'm still joined by the wonderful author Amanda Jennings with her book Sworn Secret. And we were just in the middle of talking about basically when parents think of their children as angelic, and then they find out that they're not. They may not be like that, and that's a big part of the book.
It's a massive part of the book, and I am absolutely fascinated by it. And as a parent of a teenage daughter now myself, you sort of want to think that they don't have anything hidden from you, but that's just unrealistic. And I think if you go back to when we were all children, there's always something that you don't tell your parents, be that the cigarette that you had behind the bike sheds, or be that a relationship with someone, or simple things like an argument with a friend that's actually affected them a lot. And I just think it's a really fascinating sort of area, the secrets that, and these are parents and children that are close as well. I'm not talking about children that aren't close to their parents. In this book as well, they are very close.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how the character who dies mysteriously, she has this whole other personality the second she leaves the house.
I know,
it's almost like a girl that basically is all prim and proper in the house, and the minute she leaves, she's kind of like probably shortening her skirt and getting up to all as you discover, and they get a massive shock from a discovery.
Hugely,
and it really clashes with especially the mother's idea of the daughter, because she, in her mourning process, she paints her daughter a lot, doesn't she? Because she's an artist, and she always paints angelic pictures of her daughter, and is like clashing with what's being found out about her at the moment. So
the painting was quite interesting, because again, if you try and think about people that you love, sometimes even when you haven't lost them, that image of them in your head is quite hazy, and if you actually try and picture features or mannerisms, it's quite tricky. And I thought I could imagine that, again, if one of my own children, something happened to them, I'd constantly be panicking that I couldn't remember what they looked like. And I mean, the whole book, the reason that I wrote the book is all about confronting fears as a parent, my fears.
You feel like that,
yeah,
in it,
just constantly thinking, this is, would I lose, because the mother doesn't handle the grief at all well and retreats from her family. And I think it's probably because I feel that possibly is a risk that I would have. I could imagine if something happened to one of the girls, or sort of retreating into my room with a bottle of vodka and never seeing the light of day again, it would be that sort of intense grief.
Totally, and it's also deals with that whole idea that when someone passes away that's so close to everybody, like when the mother is like obviously dealing with it worse than everybody else feels like, why are you acting as if it's just you that's suffered from this? All of us are like suffering the same thing, but she just can't think out of her, she can't sort of step up and be mature, and she's got a daughter in this, which is another massive storyline. The daughter storyline.
Yeah, and I think it's properly the love that she feels for her other daughter and her husband. They're a very close family, and I hope I've described it in the book, because we've been talking a lot about the grief, but really that's sort of centred at the beginning. But it's actually the love that they have for each other that slowly starts to drag them all together, and they suddenly sort of clump together and use the strength that they have as a family. So in a way, I hope that's been told as well, because.
And when you were writing this book, did you know what the ending was going to be? I'm curious to know your writing process when you write something like this.
Yeah, I'm quite structured actually. I find it much easier, although sort of some of the observations and some of the scenes come in at a later date, and then you obviously have to restructure, because you start to get to know, a bit cliched, but you start to get to know the characters, and you sort of think, oh, John wouldn't do that. He definitely wouldn't do that. He'd do this, and that sort of takes the story off a little bit, ricochets. But no, I did know the ending. But the first draft of this book, before I got involved with my editor, was very different. It was much more traditional crime. It was a bit more dramatic, a bit more knives at midnight.
I didn't expect the ending actually to happen the way it did. It was a good surprise, because I was gripped.
Yeah, and it's quite an ambiguous ending, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
But for me, I think the mum had to get over her grief without an easy option. It would have been too easy, I think, to have a hard and fast culprit. There are lots of different ways that people can view the ending, and I know what happened. I know who was on the roof.
Oh, I'm going to have to ask you later.
You will, I'll tell you.
Thank you so much for coming in. I could have talked about this more actually. I'm going to ask you some more questions after the extra show.
Oh, bless you. It's lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming in.
It's a
I
pleasure.
loved it.
It's been lovely to meet you. Thank you.
So that is Sworn Secret with Amanda Jennings.